Hello.
What's up, party people?
It's your two favorite gorgeous ghouls back again.
And we have got something for you.
A doozy.
A doozy. My girl, the Fupa Chalupa,
The Fupa Chalupa.
has really took a dive into um, to Elizabeth Short, into the Black Dahlia. And if you think you know this story, just wait.
There was a lot. There was so much that I was like, I have never heard this before.
Yeah,
And it's going to get pretty intense. It's going to get pretty intense, guys. Right off the bat, we're going to dive right in.
we are. But I am going to toss out a trigger warning. Um, this one will deal with dissection. Um, it does deal with autopsy reports, murder, um, and it's pretty gruesome. So if this is not for you, catch us on the flip side. We ain't got no problems with that. But if you're still with us, all right, take it away.
All right. So, on January 15th, 1947, 20-year-old aspiring actress Elizabeth Short was found brutally murdered in Los Angeles, where her body was cut in half and a ghastly smile carved into her face. The murder of Elizabeth Short, who the press dubbed the Black Dahlia, is one of the oldest cold cases in Hollywood's history. Not only was it a horrific crime, but it's also proven notoriously difficult to solve.
And for anyone that has not seen the crime scene photos of Elizabeth Short, when Lav says it's a gruesome smile, she literally looks like somebody carved the bottom half of her face to be a jack o' lantern.
It reminds me of the Joker.
An even better reference. It does. It looks like they tried to make her into the Joker.
Mm-hmm. Pull up the autopsy pictures and we can look at them. Like it,
Yes.
it looks like the whole top of her head should open and close, and that's the size of her mouth.
It says the mutilations on her face have an actual technical name, and it's called the Glasgow smile.
Okay.
And it is a torture method devised by Scotland's early gangs. So the Glasgow smile
Oh, so
would,
Glasgow, Scotland, I'm assuming.
yes. And so the gangsters would carry around it. I'm not reading it verbatim. So I'm paraphrasing for you. They would carry razors around, and they would leave these very distinctive, very eerie scars on each side of a person's face who was a rat. So if you got caught running your mouth, you got your mouth cut. And she was gorgeous.
She was
She
a pretty girl.
she
Hmm.
was
Elizabeth's body was found in a Los Angeles neighborhood of Laymart Park. A woman was out for her morning walk with her baby, is what the paper said, but it was a 3-year-old, so a toddler. And they were the first to stumble across Elizabeth's brutal scene. This lady
I just got
called,
to say this. You know every true crime out there, Lab, what is the first thing they say when they call
oh,
the police?
I literally, that was the next thing I was going to say. She
Okay,
called
go
and
for it.
reported a mannequin.
It's never a mannequin. Never,
Exactly.
guys.
Stop doing it. I actually looked up the statistics to find out how often it was called in a mannequin and it was actually a dead body. And
Hmm.
it's 98% of the time.
That doesn't
The
surprise me.
other 2% of the time, it is still not a mannequin. It was trash bags. So, It's never a mannequin.
It is never a mannequin. Jesus. So
Never. It's
could you
never.
hear the phone call? Uh, you know, California Highway Patrol, can I help you? Yes, I'm calling from Sears department store and one of our mannequins has gone missing. Oh, I think the 98 calls before you, we might have found your mannequin. You
Right.
know,
It's on the side of Highway 50.
that's right. Kind of, and there might be red jelly around it. It just no, it's never.
Never. She had severely decayed teeth. And that was shocking to me.
That's a well. That was at the time. That was a sign of poverty.
But she was
Because
22 years old. Her teeth shouldn't have been that decayed.
no, no, you're absolutely right. They shouldn't have been. So I wonder if she just didn't take care of them.
I was thinking maybe drug use.
That's very possible too.
The autopsy report also said, and do you know what the cause of death was for her? The autopsy report lists her death as blunt force trauma. She had
Oh,
received
that's right.
several fatal blows to her head, causing a massive brain hemorrhage. She was
That's
then
right.
dismembered after death.
That's
Elizabeth had been severed in two at the waist with extreme accuracy. Only specific surgeons knew how to do this specific surgery, and it was only taught during a very short time period. And we'll get into
yeah.
that later.
Yeah, you guys, this was no hack job. This there was no sign of rage that you normally get in like a lust killing. The incisions that were used to dismember her were very clean and
Hmm.
precise, and they were very patient. This
Right,
took a long time.
right. She, like I said earlier, she was completely drained of blood, and there was only transfer blood found at the scene. She was not dismembered or anything at the scene. There was hardly any blood found there.
Yeah.
Such as some of her organs, such as her intestines, were removed and then almost like folded up neatly and placed underneath her body. Her uterus was also completely removed, and from what I can tell, it was never found at the scene.
That's what I was going to say is correct me if I'm wrong, but her sexual organs, I believe it was her uterus and her ovaries, fallopian tubes. I believe all of it was dissected from her and then
Mhm.
it wasn't left with the body.
No, it
And
was
if
yeah, it was completely removed, like
yeah,
surgically removed, and there's no mention of it anywhere, so it wasn't at the crime scene. Pieces of flesh had been cut away from her thighs and her breast. In fact, her right breast had been completely cut off.
mhm.
Elizabeth also had a tattoo of a rose on her thigh. The
Oh, I
tattoo,
didn't.
yep.
What? Shut the fuck up. I didn't know that.
The tattoo had been completely cut off of her thigh. Was also all removed. She was like scalped down there.
See what I mean about this guy took his time. And yes, I'm saying it's a man because we have theories.
All of these removed pieces of flesh, the tattoo, the breast, the pubic hair, was all shoved into her vagina.
Yeah, that doesn't say sexual sadist at all, does it?
Oh, it gets worse.
It always does. It always does.
When they looked at her stomach contents, it was full of human feces, not her own.
I didn't know that.
They believe she was forced to eat somebody else's shit.
Oh. You just might as well fucking shoot me because I'm not opening my mouth. I don't care if you pinch my nose or not. I'm going out. No, no human centipede for me.
The most chilling of the mutilations, though, are the lacerations on her face, which we've already kind of talked about.
Yeah.
Um, there was only a few things that were done to her before she died. Obviously, the forcing her to eat the poop was something that happened before she died. But the lacerations, the creating of the smile on her face, they believe that was done before she was killed.
Yeah.
Due to the bruising, there was obvious signs of bleeding, and then they also found cigarette burns spread across her back.
That I remember. And it some of them, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe some of them looked as if they had been healed and they were just scarring, and then others looked a little bit more
Pressure.
fresh. Yeah, a little bit more recent.
Right. So they believe that she had been kept captive for some time and tortured. Elizabeth had ligature marks around her wrist, ankles, and throat, which I didn't know. I didn't realize that that was a thing, that she had been literally tied up.
I want to say that I do remember, um, when you look at the extensive photos, there is ligature marks on her wrists, but I don't remember anything on her neck.
The pictures I could see it, but I feel like thinking that before. I was like, it looks like they cut her neck or something.
Yeah, it does. We've dealt with, and we have talked about, and podcasters all over, true crimes all over have talked about some of the most sadistic killers, the Bundys and the Dahmers and the Gacy's.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the 40s.
Right.
This young lady was obviously tortured.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
And
it's obvious. That's obvious, just based on the autopsy.
right. And yet some people seem to feel that Hollywood is what is the downfall of our society now. Hollywood and video games makes serial killers. Well, I've got news for you guys. There was no killer movies in the 40s. There was definitely no video games. So, what's your
Well, there's
reasoning for
just
that?
serial killers prior to Hollywood too, like Albert Fish or
H. Holmes,
right, Jack
the
the Ripper.
Ripper, the
Yep.
Rip, yeah.
So I don't believe. I think Hollywood has some negative effects on our lifestyles, but to create serial killers, no, I don't think so.
But I think, truthfully, I mean, everything that we do, everything that we have, can have a negative impact on our life. It depends on how we as humans decide to allow that impact to go. If you're already in a sensitive, delicate frame of mind, don't go out looking for the most horrific horror movie or true crime you can find.
Right,
You take
right.
take some fucking responsibility for your own stuff. Don't blame everything. Bundy blamed everything on pornography. It's like, nah, dude.
All those dirty movies.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I've seen my share, and I've never killed anyone.
Well, Elizabeth Swoopa Chulupa was washed all clean. Her body was completely washed. There was no sign of any fingerprints, hairs, anything like that. So it was obvious to the police that she had been murdered elsewhere and
Yeah.
then dumped.
Um, I believe that her body had been basically whitewashed with bleach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It had. It had. So yeah, they and it's funny because as we go further in the story, they actually, I think it was gasoline. They had whitewashed her with gasoline.
Oh, okay.
So as we go further into the story, there's other evidence and stuff that they come across that has also had the same thing. There was, like I said, there was
Oh.
no blood at the crime scene, only bits of transfer blood.
Mhm.
Um, there was also some heel marks from like a man's like
Boot.
dress, shoe, or boot or something, but not the full foot. It was only the heel impression, and there was
Mm.
also a concrete sack that had traces of her blood on the sack. The other thing that I really found interesting was that there was no mention in the autopsy of rigor mortis or rigor or even a basic body temperature taken at the scene. They based her time of death on the dew. They looked at the dew around her and then compared
Uh-huh.
it to the amount of moisture underneath her body and came up with 2 a.m. that she thinks she was dumped at 2 a.m.
That's kind of like that reminds me of Edna Posey. Um, Remember that's how they kind of decided that her time of death was because of the dew where her body had been pushed down the hill.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Uh,
exactly. Right. Another thing that I found interesting was that there was debris found on Elizabeth's face and like the front of her torso. This showed police that she had first been
face
either
down.
pushed out of the car or
Mhm.
laid face down and then was then rolled over onto her back and posed.
Oh, definitely. She's definitely posed.
So
So,
there's a surrealist photographer by the name of Man Ray, and he did several pictures, like artwork photography type, like surrealist, weird, cut and paste, like big eyeballs and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
He has a picture called the Minotaur, and this picture is of a naked woman cut in half, very similar to her. And George Hodel had this picture in his house. His son Steve Hodel remembers it.
Mhm.
And that's one of the first things that Steve Hodel said was this person, she was posed to mimic that that picture or painting. I'm not sure if it's a photo or a painting, but mimic that artwork.
Yeah, you want to talk about the rabbit hole. Here we go. Here's a
Right.
rabbit hole.
So another thing that I found interesting was there was no defensive wounds found on Elizabeth. There was no signs that she fought back. Elizabeth Short's mother, Phoebe, didn't learn of her daughter's death until the reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner telephoned her and pretended that Elizabeth had won a beauty contest. They asked for Elizabeth's life story, essentially, and after getting all of the details from Elizabeth's mom, they revealed the truth that her daughter had been murdered.
The amount of rage that would bring up in me. Um, I mean, you couldn't do something like that nowadays because a lawsuit would be slapped on you and your publication would go out the window because there'd
Right.
be millions. You'd lose millions for shit like that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
That's
But
cruel.
they
That's
just
very
didn't do that
cruel.
with Elizabeth's mom. They pulled the same scenario on Elizabeth's friends, ex-lovers, all kinds of stuff. Eventually, they pieced together this history and branded her as a sexual deviant.
Oh, fuck.
Even the police got on board with this. In one of the police reports, it reads the victim knew at least 50 men at the time of her death, and at least 25 men had been seen with her in the last 60 days preceding her death. She was known as a teaser of men. That's the exact words in the police report. She was known as a teaser of men.
Big deal. That's what sexuality is. But see, I'm going to jump on my soapbox just for a second. This is in a time when women were not supposed to feel sexual. We
Mm-hmm.
and even it's even kind of now, but it's not so much now as it was then. You were supposed to be pious. You were supposed to be um, outwardly. You were supposed to be pious. You were supposed to be humble. You were supposed to be pure.
Mm-hmm.
But then when your man, your one and only man, got you behind closed doors, that's when you could be a whore. That is the whole Madonna whore complex that men put on women.
Right.
And so what? She liked to dress beautiful. So what? She liked to go out with men. And so what if she liked to have sex with them? There is nothing wrong with that. And if people have a problem with it, then keep your nose out of their fucking bedroom.
But
I
this
ain't
is
buying
this history and her choice of black sheer clothing, her light complexion, and her
it.
dark
Mhm.
colored hair is what gave her the nickname, the Black Dahlia. As time went on, the case grew cold. So let's go into some of and there was a lot of suspects. The police in this like 126-page report that I read, they had interviewed like 750 men.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I just kind of picked out the most interesting ones.
Oh, we're not going to do all 700?
Oh no. Oh god no. And some of them were it was just a name, and it was like, the police report would say like they interviewed so and so, and that they determined he was not involved. It didn't even have any like content of what they talked about with majority of them. So after George Hodel died in 1999 is when his son Steve Hodel starts to point the fingers at good old daddy. George was a surgeon, and he actually used that brand of the medical bandage from Georgette's case. Was the same sort of medical bandage or wrap or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm. It's like a
is what
gauze.
yeah, is what George used in his practices. And so there's the link between Georgette and George Hodel. And this they link Steve links his dad to this because of the precision incisions on Elizabeth. So
Um,
what spurs this with Steve was that after his dad dies, he's going through a box that he just finds. And in this box, he comes across these photographs. Now, these are like photographs that people take. It's not like newspaper clippings or anything, it's
mhm.
photographs. And he's like, this person looks so familiar. After a little while, he realizes, after looking like, who is this, why does this woman look so familiar to me, that it was Elizabeth Short. His father had photographs of Elizabeth Short hidden in his possession. So this is kind of why he started digging into his dad's past,
Mhm.
written in both Georgette and Elizabeth's cases. Steve had his dad's handwriting compared to the writings of the notes. The analysis found a strong possibility that his father's handwriting was a match, but the results were not conclusive. The Black Dahlia's crime scene photo showed that her body had been cut in a manner consistent with a hemicorpectomy, hemicorpectomy, which is a medical procedure that slices the body beneath the lumbar spine. While George was a doctor, during the time he attended medical school, so I just combined medical school together to one word, school.
Hey, that's we can make up words. We can make up our own language. Why not?
So when George was attending medical school was the only time period that this procedure was being taught. The only time period that this procedure was taught.
Wow. If that does not solidify your suspicion of Hodel, then you have not been listening.
Right. And
Man.
so as Steve Hodel is digging further and further, he finds out that his father was a suspect during the time of the crime as well.
I remember that. I remember that detail.
And that in the 1950s, now this is 3+ years after Elizabeth's death, the police bugged their home and was recording audio from the home. The reports are, most of them are just boring day-to-day conversations, but there is a couple of them that kind of stuck out. And one was, it was 8:25 p.m. I don't know what the date was, but it was just a woman screaming over and over again. That's the audio. It's just a woman screaming. There's nobody talking or anything. It's just a woman screaming. But this is after Elizabeth Short's death.
Mm-hmm. So
Later
they
that
probably knew her.
same later that same day, they get a recording of George Hodel telling somebody, "I realize there's nothing I could do. Put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket. Get a taxi. She expired at 12:59. They thought there was always something fishy. Anyway, now they may have it figured out. I killed her." He was then recorded several minutes after this, and he said, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore either because now she's dead."
Okay, I got to go on both sides. On one side, of course, people are going to say things in their own home that because they don't think anybody's true is listening. I mean, even with a lot of our conspiracy and doomsday preppers now. Um, but secondly, why would he be, or well, first, still on that side, why would he be talking about murdering these people? And was it ever, I don't remember if it was ever documented that his secretary was or was not dead,
Yeah,
or if she
his
was missing.
secretary died of, if I remember right, it was a undetermined death. Like they it was unclassified.
Okay. But on the same side, we also know that people at times like to claim responsibility for heinous, sensationalized crimes because they like the attention.
Right.
I don't truly believe. I mean, we should throw it out there just because, but I don't truly believe that's what it is. I think he killed him. I think he killed her. He killed Georgette. He killed his secretary, and who knows?
There are several women that they kind of connect all together here. So
Hmm.
regardless of who the killer is, it's connected that it's the same killer for multiple women. So this is all done, like all of this is talked about in Steve Hodel's book, Black Dahlia Avenger.
Hmm.
But we also have another armchair detective that comes out. In 2017, there's a British author by the name of Payu Eatwell. And she announced that she had finally solved the decades old case. And she writes about it in the Black Dahlia Red Rose, the crime, corruption, and cover up of America's greatest unsolved murder, which
Oh,
is
I
her
got to
book.
get this. I got to get this.
So she says that the real culprit is somebody by the name of Leslie Dillon, who is a man the police briefly considered the primary suspect, but ultimately let go. They could never like re-question him or do anything with him because he ultimately killed himself.
Okay,
She suggests that he killed himself because of what he did to Elizabeth.
I can't get behind that.
So
No.
according to Eatwell, Leslie was a bellhop and he was ordered to murder Elizabeth by the request of Mark Hinson, a local nightclub and movie theater owner, which is where Leslie worked. Mark was actually another suspect that the police talked to, determined that he had nothing to do with it, and let him go.
Okay.
Elizabeth had reportedly stayed with Mark on and off. She would spend a few nights there and kind of was like couch hopping. He was one of the last people reportedly to have seen her before her death. And he had actually talked to her on the phone January 8th, so about a week before her murder. But remember, she's thought to have been held captive for a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Eatwell alleges that Mark was infuriated by Elizabeth, then that he had came on to her, and she brushed him off and was like, "I'm not interested," or whatever. And that is when he essentially tied her up and kept her captive and tortured her for a week.
No,
He
no.
supposedly told Leslie, after he was done having his fun with her, to take care of her. Take care of her. Previously, Leslie worked as a mortician's assistant, so he would know how to drain the blood out of a body. However, he wouldn't know how to do that incision to cut her body in half like that.
That's what
That's
I was
not
going to
something that a
say.
mortician does.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is yeah. So what he can, embalm her. He can drain her blood, but eh, this would have been kind of like a lust killing. This would have been shown rage. There this would not have been as precision. The person that did this, and I'm still going with Hodel,
Mm-hmm.
had time, had a place, and had the sociopathic behaviors to support this. You know, sorry, Ms. Eatwell, or but your book is
Payu, I think is how you pronounce her first name.
Mrs. Payu. Your book is bullshit.
She does say, and I did find in the police records, that's where I learned about the rose tattoo as
Mm.
well, was that Leslie told the police about the rose tattoo, which wasn't common knowledge. But if he was a sexual encounter from Elizabeth, he would have known about it.
Right. And too, maybe they weren't intimately involved, but I'm a tattoo enthusiast, you're a tattoo enthusiast. And in that time period, unless you were military, like sailors especially, um, unless you were a roughhouser or you were an outlaw, you didn't get tattoos. So this may have been something she did, on the fringes of, society. She went out and did something wild. I
Mm-hmm.
would fucking brag about it.
Right.
So
Another
that doesn't hold water.
another thing that I found interesting, according to Eatwell, is that there is a hotel or a motel
Or a no-tell.
or a no-tell that the owner, his name is Henry, apparently on the morning of January 15th, he had let um, Leslie and Mark, or one or the other, it doesn't really specify who, but he had let them, that one of them had rented the room, essentially. And so he went in the morning of the 15th and to clean or to check them out or something, and the room was covered in blood and fecal matter. And he also found a bundle of women's clothes wrapped in brown paper. He never reported the crime until way later.
So I started to say, he didn't report it, so it didn't happen.
No, he reported it way later, He says he just cleaned it up. He actually reported it after he was arrested for beating his wife to a bloody pulp, and he was trying to, I know this information, let me off the hook kind of situation.
Yeah, it's I'll show you mine, you show me yours.
Yep, it was one of those. So those were the two most interesting suspects that some, armchair detectives have came across, but I still think that Jack Anderson Wilson, and you'll remember his name from Georgette's case.
Mhm.
He was a lifelong criminal. He was an alcoholic. He's been known to, sexually assault women in the past, all this kind of stuff. He was actually interviewed by an author named John Gilmore in his research for the book named Severed. And I didn't really look much into this book, but I'm assuming it's another Black Dahlia book just based on the name.
I'm gonna look it up.
So Jack has always ranked in the suspects list for both cases. He was a thin alcoholic. He was 6'4". He was in the services somehow. I think he was in the army. He used to go to the canteen all the time. And even after Georgette died, the Hollywood canteen was still a thing. And
Oh
Elizabeth
yeah.
Short was known to frequent the Hollywood canteen as well. What makes him interesting to me is that when he was questioned by the police, he had made the comment about Georgette being in the bathtub, which wasn't released.
Mhm. Let's see, in your opinion, what is the actual likelihood that a tall drunk completed these very surgically precise actions?
Oh no, there's no way. There's no way that he would have been able to do that.
People
And he,
here.
he was very distinctive. Like he had a limp. So, and
Oh,
everybody recognized him by a limp. It's, going to and from, people are, just because he has a limp, he's going to be more noticeable. People would have
yeah.
seen him coming and going. He wouldn't be able to just kind of slip in and out unnoticed like these other men could have potentially.
Hmm.
But
And if
I don't think that he would have the knowledge or that he would have the patience.
Oh no. And um I believe uh Hodel was kind of on a watch list for us for a physician who was uh, performing back alley abortions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was how he became acquainted with Elizabeth, was she went to him for an abortion.
Well, and they believe that that's how he met Georgette as well.
Birth control was not available, and they had to use it this way because women having babies out of wedlock, you might as well just be a criminal because that's how you're going to get treated.
Right, right. I mean, yeah. So now I have the letters from both Georgette and Elizabeth's cases.
Oh,
We'll start with
mhm.
Georgette's, and it's a typed letter, and it's typed double spaced. It's about 5 words per line, double space, 5 more words, double space, 5 more words. So it's a very long, thin letter. Okay, just
It
kind of looking.
sounds
It's just oddly typed.
it
It's
sounds
very
like a
distinctive.
maniac.
So it says, to the Los Angeles police. Almost a year ago, Georgette, age 20, Hollywood canteen hostess, was murdered in her apartment in West Hollywood. Between now and October 11th, a year after her death, the one who murdered her will appear at the Hollywood canteen. The murderer will be in uniform. He has since committed the murder, been in action in Aquanal. How the hell do you say that? In Japan. Whatever that city is.
Okinawa?
There you go. Okinawa. The murder of
Dude,
Georgette.
the Karate Kid, come on. Wax on, wax off. The hell? I may have lost some respect for you. I don't
I'm
know.
having a problem with my tongue today. It's not working.
I never have a problem with mine.
The murder of Georgette was divine retribution. Let the Los Angeles police arrest the murderer if they can.
Oh shit.
So this letter was found outside of Georgette's parents' house by an 11-year-old girl walking home from school. It was typed
I
on a
hope she.
yeah, it was
I hope
typed
she
on
could
a
read.
notebook paper. It was stuffed inside a dirty envelope. The newspaper did drop a clue that's not disclosed to the public at the time of the homicide a year earlier. And it reported that there was a suggestion by Georgette's friends that Georgette was accompanied home by a man in uniform, which we kind of talked about, that guy that she supposedly gave a ride home to.
Yeah, yeah.
So now's the Elizabeth's notes. Now hers were handwritten, and there was several for hers.
Well, it's sensationalized at that
Mm-hmm.
time now because there's two.
Elizabeth's case, the first one was sent on January 21st, about a week after her body was found. And the newspaper is the one that received. Well, actually, I guess this wasn't even a letter. This was a phone call.
Oh.
And the newspaper, the Examiner, received this phone call of a man claiming to be the murderer, who said he would be sending Elizabeth's belongings in the mail as proof that he was her murderer. On the 24th of January, the newspaper, the Examiner, received a package with Elizabeth's birth certificate, photo IDs, business cards, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen on the cover, which is that hotel business owner guy that supposedly,
Okay.
had her killed. Also included in the package was a letter pasted together from newspaper and magazine letter clippings, and it read, Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers, here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow. All of the items in the package, including the letter, had been wiped down with gasoline.
Okay.
They did, however, find a partial fingerprint on the envelope, but it was damaged in collection and preservation, so they've never been able to analyze it.
And it probably honestly was the mailman's, wasn't even the
Right,
perpetrator.
probably. On the 26th, so 2 days later, another letter arrives. This one was a handwritten note that says, here it is. Turning in early on Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Adventure. The letter included a location. Police waited at the appointed place and time, but the murderer never showed.
Well, yeah. I'm stupid to think he would.
Right? Afterward, the murderer sent another note. This one was like the first one with the letters cut out of magazines to the newspaper, and this one simply said, have changed my mind. You cannot give me a square deal. The Dahlia killing was justified.
Justified.
Yep. My dog apparently agrees with that, because I don't know if anybody else could hear her clapping in there, but
I was going to say, I heard an ovation.
She apparently thinks that it was justified as well. You're on the wrong team.
No.
You're on the
Harley,
wrong team.
no. No, Harley.
What struck me as similar between the two letters is that both of them taunt the police,
Mhm.
but they're not sending anything directly to the police.
So they
The
they they want it in the
Georgette's was
newspapers.
left for somebody to find,
Mm.
and it was addressed to the police department, but it was left for her family essentially to find, but it wasn't her family that found it. And then Elizabeth's was sent to the newspapers. And then I also found it interesting that he mentions the Hollywood canteen in kind of both and references both.
Mhm.
But what's weird to me is that he says the murderer is going to be in uniform at the canteen, but the only the one guy with the limp was ever in the service. The other individuals that were involved, suspects, there was never really anybody, at least for Elizabeth's case, that really stuck out as being in the military.
Right. But okay, so this uniform, are we 100% sure it's a military uniform? It's not police, fire,
It could be any of that, honestly.
doctor?
But the canteen was primarily for military. Like, it wasn't a club that just anybody could get into.
So someone like that would stand out big
Mhm.
time. Yeah.
Right. They would. Another thing that I thought was interesting is that in Georgette's case, he claims the crime was divine retribution. And then for Elizabeth's case, he said that it was justified. So is this something against women, like stepping out of that sexual restriction that society has?
Is this divine retribution? Let's put them both together because they had abortions,
Could
and
be.
that
Mhm.
goes against the air quotes beliefs of um, the righteous.
Right.
Let's say.
And he calls himself the Black Dahlia Avenger, which is, that to me is weird because Avenger is, and I'm not really sure what the actual definition is. I guess we could look really fast.
Of an Avenger?
Oh yeah, but to me that's like a savior. But
Yeah,
the
an Avenger
this
is someone who would go out and fight for the reputation, for the safety, and for the justice of a victim.
so the definition is a person who exacts punishment or inflicts harm in return for any wrongdoing.
Mhm.
So he calls himself the Black Dahlia Avenger.
But he's not
So
really. Not if he's claiming to have done this, he's not the Avenger.
exactly, that's my thinking as well. Like, he's what is he avenging? Not Black Dahlia.
It would be his own agenda, but I would think he would say it that like if he say is like a soldier for Christ, an avenger of, children, avenger of righteousness, avenger of something else, not her avenger specifically.
Well, and if he was her avenger, he would have been trying to kill the person that killed her. He's avenging her.
Or going out and getting them
Right.
and turning them in, not fucking taunting police and
Right.
media and others. No.
So that's
It-
that's that wording is weird to me.
that screams to me about probably limited education, and this person probably Truthfully, had
But
no
that
idea
wouldn't but
what
that wouldn't
Avenger really was.
coincide with Hodel then.
Not at all. Not at
With
all.
this, so I think that the
I think this is pulling this out of my hat. Um, I think the letter writer just wanted attention. They may had information, they may have known bits and pieces, but they are not the killer, and we're not the killer.
well, and in the letters they don't really give any information. They aren't really showing that they know any information
Yeah.
either.
So this is attention seeking.
I do find it weird that with Elizabeth that everything was wiped down with gasoline, just like her body was. To me, that's weird. And as far as I can tell, that wasn't information that was released.
And you know what, dude? If you're gonna avenge her death, you're in the absolute wrong place because um you and I would be more considered avengers because we're looking at the aspects of this case and we're trying to figure out now all of these years later, what, 70, 80
Hmm.
years later, trying to put the pieces together to see who the most likely suspect or most likely perpetrator would be. So could we be called Dahlia Avengers? Yes.
Right, I agree with that.
Can this guy? No. This guy's an attention. He just attention whore.
Right. I do think that Hodel is the one that seems to fit the best with it.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have the motive, but on the flip side too, like if the motive is the abortion things, then and he's performing them, then he's just as guilty. Like his conscience has to be just as guilty. How can he be?
Yeah.
How can he be killing women for doing it when he's offering the service? So that's kind of a weird.
Okay. Toss it out there. Dr. Death. What was it? Harry Shipman?
Right.
Um, greed, lust,
Right. True.
socio sociopathy. His psychopathy got in the way of his Hippocratic oath. You know, they say, and this is a stretch, but I've heard it so many times that, some of the most damaged people go into careers of prestige so that they're able to kind of uh, sociologically heal their whatever's broken in them. A lot of traumatized people go into to become therapists, become counselors, social workers. Um, a lot of time doctors go into the field because they had a family member or a close, maybe a partner or something that was terminally ill and nothing could be done about it. And they want to
Right.
find that cure. That I truly believe we can attach that to Hodel. He had
Right.
something loose in his brain.
Well, I've also heard in one of my college classes. I can't remember for sure which class it was in, but we had a surgeon come in and he was talking to us. He was a diagnosed sociopath.
Mm. Yeah, there you go.
And he came in and he was talking to us about his diagnosis, and
Hmm.
he got the diagnosis after, like, he started the career as a surgeon, and he's still a surgeon today as far as I know. But that's
Hmm.
why he got into being a surgeon, because he was so fascinated by people bleeding and things like that. And so instead of, doing it to kill people, he took it to a place of learning how to use that fascination to save people.
And I've heard that about butchers and meat cutters and morticians, and it's they realize they have this unnatural desire for
Mm-hmm.
things that may be frowned upon in society. And now party people remember that a sociopath and a psychopath are only separated by a thin line of intelligence.
Right, right.
Um, Psychopaths can be very intelligent. Sociopaths are brilliant geniuses. I mean, Bundy had an IQ of 168, I want to say, or
Mm-hmm.
16. It was 163, 168. But then you had Gacy, who was he was a little bit lower on that scale. He wasn't quite a genius, but he was very, very manipulative, conniving. Very,
Mm-hmm.
he was a good planner.
Right.
So
It's yeah.
I I'm honestly, I have felt this since I read Hodell's book. It's him.
I think so too.
There's too many things that
And
point
then like
his
he
direction.
came across the receipts.
Mhm.
I had the note in here, but I didn't bring it up just because I was kind of skipping around. But Steve found, here it is. Steve found a bag after his dad's death of old receipts, and he was just kind of going through the receipts, and there was several receipts from just a few days before Elizabeth Short's murder, and one of the receipts was for concrete, a bag of concrete, that exact brand, that exact size, everything. Like it's
And
just the coincidences are just too close.
there's too many. And as far as this letter writer, he may be involved because how many people are going to be able to carry dead weight um, to a out of one location into a vehicle and
Well,
into
and
another
and
location?
Steve or George he had to have had somewhere to have her kept and
Mhm.
to do this, surgery like procedures on her. It
Mhm.
wasn't at his house.
And if I remember from the book, Hodell's um, surgical theater, as it could be called, like his office was not. It was in a site. It was at his on his property, but it was not connected to his home.
No, it was
And
like in a
there,
garage or like
yeah,
a off.
it was a side building that had its complete own. Um, it could be sustained on its own. It had totally different private entrances and exits because of the procedures he was performing there.
Yeah.
So, and if he just decided not to take any, any patients while he had Elizabeth, nobody would be any of the wiser. They wouldn't be like, well, Dr. Hodel, why can't you see me? I'm just not seeing
Right.
patients.
Right. But I agree with you. I don't think that he could have gotten her like
Mm-mm.
that. He had to have had somebody helping
Mm-hmm.
him.
And who better than a drunkard of a doorman who knows of or knows these women, maybe not intimately, but personally.
Right.
And you know as well as I do, drugs and alcohol, if you don't make, like, they couldn't make very much money, in that day. And, we have prohibition, we had other things like that. You just couldn't go out and drink wherever you wanted. There were guidelines. And you got to have money for this.
Right.
And, maybe a doctor doing backdoor abortions, a $10 bill was nothing to him, but to a drunkard at that time period, boy, he probably could have paid his rent. He probably could have got him a couple good bottles of night train, good bottle of Ripple, and would probably have done just about anything to get it.
Right. I agree. I agree.
Like we always say, give us a like, give us a share, give us 5 stars, give us 1 star. Tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we're doing wrong. Drop us a line if there's something you want to hear about. Drop us a line if there's something you want to clarify. If we do very diligent research, and if we've not done a subject you're passionate about righteously, drop us a line. We will happily bring you on or bring your ideas on and correct the misleading. We don't have a problem with that.
Absolutely.
So, you
We'll
guys,
catch you on the flip side.
you stole my line.
Yep. And what do they call it on Stranger Things?
Oh, in the upside down.
The upside down. Oh, we'll catch you in the upside down.
There we
There,
go.
I like it.
All right, guys. Until next time.
Bye.